I remember my freshman year, I had logic with a Dominican father by the name of Father Heath. He was a big, tall, 6'4" guy, you know, and everyone would say how tough he was. And I remember the first day in class, we had to fill out these attendance cards. And so after we filled them out, and he collected them, and he's looking through them, and finally he said, Mr. Whalen, Mr. Wilkins, stand up. And we stood up in the class, you know, and he said, I don't like athletes. He says, and particularly I don't like basketball players. So don't ever cut my class without a good reason.
Providence College basketball. It is as much a tradition in the state of Rhode Island as coffee milk and quahogs. It is an astonishing rise from 1917, the year the Dominicans opened the doors to the school. Although athletics were a part of PC right from the start, the games of choice were primarily baseball and football. In the early 20s, there were attempts to start a basketball program, but it was not until 1927 that it officially became a varsity sport. Archie Golombeski was the first coach. He also coached football, but when two sports proved too tough to handle, Al the General McClellan was hired to get the fledgling basketball program off the ground. Almost from the start, McClellan had the Friars playing a quality brand of basketball that quickly established PC as one of the top teams in the East. In 1929, the Friars, led by All-American Ed Wineapple, posted an impressive 17-3 record. Playing in tiny Harkins Hall, McClellan's teams continued their regional dominance into the 30s. But by late in the decade, the Friars began to struggle, and Coach Ed Crotty was brought in to replace McClellan. Crotty brought new life into the program, and in 1942, PC's first great team was born.
They were great players, all team players. No one was a outstanding character, you know what I mean? They're all part of the team.
Led by stars such as Ted McConnell and Chet Zabik, the 1942 Friars re-established themselves as Rhode Island's dominant team. Before 5,800 fans, at that time the largest crowd ever to see a basketball game in New England, PC earned a 60-54 win over Rhode Island State. The following year, the Friars started off with a record of 15-5 and had their sights set on postseason tournament play. But it would never come. Uncle Sam came calling instead.
We were just coming around at that time to have a great team, and all of a sudden, every week somebody would leave, going into the service. I guess I was pretty close to one of the end players before they closed the team up.
One by one, the draft took apart the Friars' first great team, and they never got a chance to show what they could do on a national level. With a depleted campus, the basketball program was shut down for the entire 1943-44 season. Only a handful of players, including Larry Drew, returned to PC after their tour of duty.
It wasn't the same team, different individuals and everything else, and it was a little bit more difficult, shall we say, because we had to play more rugged ball in the service, you know what I mean? You got away with the fouls a lot more than you could with college.
Drew took over as head coach, but the lingering effects of World War II were still hurting the program, and the Friars began to have losing seasons. Father Robert Slavin became the 6th president of Providence College in 1947. A man of vision, it took him only a few years to make an imprint on the school and its basketball program. After attending a conference in Philadelphia, Slavin took in a couple of basketball games involving some of the city's top teams, like St. Joseph's and Villanova. He wondered why PC's team couldn't be just as successful. Added to this was the emergence of Holy Cross as a national power. Slavin, not intent on letting Providence become a second-tier program among similar-sized Catholic schools, began making changes that still have an impact today. He began with the hiring of Vincent Cuddy as head coach for the 1949-50 season.
I liked the man. He was sincere. There was nothing phony about him. He lived and died with the Friars.
People received him extremely well. He did a lot for the program there. In other words, he was one of the stepping stones to the big time.
With new players like Jim Schlimm and Bobby Moran, the excitement started to return to the campus. And in 1951, PC attended its first national postseason tournament, the NAIB, in Kansas City.
It was the first time I was ever on a commercial airplane. It was a prop plane. We flew from Providence to, I think it was Providence to Pittsburgh to Kansas City, and the same way coming back.
We played the first game of the tournament on the Monday and got beat.
There was, I think, 64 teams there from all the states plus Puerto Rico, and it was just basketball all day long.
But the best part of the whole thing was the plane didn't come take us back until the following Sunday when the tournament was all over with. Those were the arrangements that were made. So we had a wonderful final week out in Kansas City, not playing, not practicing, not doing anything but enjoying the tournament and having a good time.
Cuddy's success had generated a basketball buzz, and the team was now getting regular ink in the local papers. Slavin's next step was an even bigger one.
We were all excited about the new gym and couldn't wait to get in there and play the first game.
But before the Friars could play that first game at brand new Alumni Hall, one more move was made by Slavin. It would prove to be his greatest.
Joe was a very trustworthy person. Anybody who was recruited by Joe, whatever Joe told them, Joe delivered. There was no question. He was a very credible man, a real family man, you know, the kind of a person that you really want to play for, and the kind of a coach that Providence College always wanted to have. I think their pattern is to always try and find another Joe Mullaney each time they go looking for a coach.
His innate feeling and instincts for the game were very unusual. He was really a tactical genius, in my opinion. He did things not by the book, he did things by feel. He came up with a concept defensively in the matchup zone that was way ahead of its time, and that in itself translated to an awful lot of victories when he was getting Providence on the map against teams who had more talent.
In the late fall of 1955, as the just-finished Alumni Hall opened, Joe Mullaney took over as head basketball coach. It did not take long for people to realize that there were good times ahead for the Friars. The Mullaney magic began in February of 1956 when mighty Notre Dame paid a visit.
Joe's attitude was this was just another team coming into Providence to play us. They had played Holy Cross the night before. He said they're going to be tired, so he said that'll be to our advantage. And you keep those things in the back of your head, and as the game progressed, we saw that they weren't that much better than we were. If they were better, I'm not sure they were.
The game was tied through regulation, but several of PC starters had fouled out. In overtime, with the score still tied, Providence rebounded a Notre Dame miss and called timeout. Little-used Gordy Holmes was about to take his place in history.
The play was not for Gordy to take the shot, but the position in the lineup and the defense didn't allow it.
It went to Gordy, and he fired it right away. He had a funny twisting shot that he took. We used to make fun of him.
He was totally free to take that shot, and I went straight for the boards for the rebound, just in case.
He looked up, and the ball went through a swish, and it was all over, and was screaming and yelling, and everybody was down on the court.
Pandemonium, absolute pandemonium, glory, the whole works.
With one shot, Joe Mullaney and the Providence Friars began an era that would change the school from a top Eastern team to a national power.
And Father Slavin gave us off from school the next day, so nobody had to go to class.
PC entered the 1956 season with a record of 14-8. The following year, a young kid from Brooklyn arrived on campus.
Basically, they were the only school that offered me a scholarship. I was late getting into basketball, and I only played a half a year of high school ball. So hardly anyone had seen me play. And I played in a postseason tournament, which was out at the Flushing YMCA out on Long Island. And as it turned out, my team won. I got the MVP, and Joe's dad was at the game. So within days, Providence said, yeah, we'll take him, you know.
With Lenny Wilkins, Joe Mullaney's first great recruit, the Friars raised their game to the next level.
Those were some wonderful years. And my sophomore year, we were 18-6, but I felt we beat some very good teams, and I thought we should have been invited to a tournament, but I felt it would come the next year. And of course, the most prestigious tournament at that time was the NIT. It was even more prestigious than the NC2A, and everybody wanted to go to the NIT.
For the next 5 years, Providence College was a fixture at the National Invitation Tournament. In 1958, another outstanding recruit joined the varsity in John Egan. And that season, he turned in one of the school's greatest performances with 39 points in a quadruple overtime win against Villanova. That game propelled the Friars to their first ever NIT. In the tournament, PC made it to the semifinals before losing to St. John's. But with a double overtime win against St. Louis in the early rounds, the Friars became celebrities. With no one over 6'5", Mullaney's Midgets became cult favorites among the media and the fans.
We had 7,000 people come from Rhode Island to take part in the NIT, which at that time was unheard of. You know, it was because we were not a big school, but it was fun. It was, and then of course everywhere we went, everyone knew the players on the team, and the excitement in the city was like electricity.
The following season, PC's first legitimate big man, Jim Hadnot, joined the team. Midgets no more, the Friars reached the NIT finals, eventually losing to Bradley. Despite the loss, Wilkins took MVP honors. For the 1960-61 season, a new backcourt would put the Friars over the top.
Vinnie Ernst and I used to play down the Jersey Shore. We used to play in New York. And we'd play ball with a lot of the top names in the country, and we just knew that we could compete with them.
We had height in Hadnot, we had strength in Zaleki, we had quickness with Egan and Ernst, we could shooters with Flynn, Carl Spencer. So we were very deep, I thought, maybe to 8 players.
With a record of 20-5, PC had no trouble reaching the NIT and a semifinal date with rival Holy Cross. In yet another seesaw battle, the two were tied with no time left on the clock, and Vinnie Ernst on the line to shoot 2.
The fans were in the background, and they were actually shaking the stanchions that held the basket, and it was wavering a little bit.
I suspect that the referees couldn't do anything about it, but you know, that's what happened. The Madison Square Garden was a bedlam.
Ernst missed both shots, sending the game to overtime.
We all embraced him, gave him a big hug and say, Vinny, let's, you know, this is a new start here. We're going into overtime now. Put it behind you, forget about it. A lesser man probably would have been devastated by the fact that, you know, here we had a chance of winning the game. He had the chance of winning it, and he didn't take advantage of it. It didn't happen.
Didn't even phase him missing that shot, because the overtime, he just was involved in every single play, either scoring or assist-wise.
With Ernst leading the way, the Friars took it to Holy Cross in overtime. The NIT Finals pitted Providence against a tough St. Louis team, but Ernst and company would not be denied, and Providence College had finally won its first NIT title. Another year and another star player in John Thompson. But after a quick exit in the 1962 NIT, the Friars of 1963 were eager to get back to the finals.
We kind of struggled through December. We lost a couple of games. We got blown out of Canisius, and Joe gave his famous halftime speech. He was so frustrated at the half, he never went in the locker room. Never said a word. We came out in the second half, and the players kind of looking at me and looking at everybody. They got the message, and we never lost again.
Which included a thrilling NIT victory over Rick Barry and Miami.
We knew that if we were going to win that game, it would be pretty much tantamount to winning the national championship in NIT. And interestingly enough, I remember specifically saying to Vinny Ernst before the game, I say, Vinny, we're going to have to get 100 points to beat this team tonight.
The final, 106-96. The Friars then took care of Marquette and Canisius en route to their second NIT championship.
And Flynn lets fly. Hit.
The team had now become icons in their home state.
They came back from New York, and people lined the highway from Route 6 and Foster all the way into downtown Providence. I mean, think about that. That's incredible. You're talking about, what, 20 miles, and they were lined up. And it was that kind of reaction.
The butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker, and they were all Friar fans, and they'd line up at the state line, and the roads would be lined all the way into campus with people cheering the bus as we came home.
It was probably just then that I understood the intensity and the admiration and love that the people of Rhode Island had for Providence College. I thought before that it was enthusiasm based on sports and winning championships, but it was far greater than that. It was, in fact, an admiration for this particular team because, look, I don't think that anybody predicted, 6-7 years before that, Providence College, the small Catholic college, would go on to national prominence.
The Friars were a state obsession. Everywhere you went in Rhode Island, people were glued to their television sets and radios, listening to the call of Chris Clark. And Joe Mullaney did not stop bringing in quality players. PC's next superstar was right around the corner.
Well, I like to play pro ball, but I'm majoring in sociology.
I was in high school, and I had a friend who went to PC, and he said to me, you have to come watch this kid on the PC freshman team. And I said, what do you mean you have to come watch this kid? He said, he does things with the basketball that no one's ever done before. So I'm listening to him like, what is this guy talking about? And I'll never forget it. We came up one night and looked through the windows at Alumni Hall on Thanksgiving vacation, and the PC freshman team were practicing, and Jimmy Walker was the first person I ever saw dribble the ball through his legs.
I felt like I was playing with a pro as a freshman. His game was so developed, his skills were far superior than any other freshman that we encountered.
And he was big and he was strong and he had tremendous ball handling ability, and he backed people down, which people didn't do back then.
He had a spin move, a change of direction that he could turn on a dime, and he coupled that with a great jump shooting game.
I watched Bob Cousy play, and what I noticed is how smart a dribbler Bob Cousy was. Sometimes things that people call fancy were necessary because of what the defense did. Bob Cousy was one of the people that I watched that when he did things behind his back, through his legs, he did it based on what the defense did, not just to show off.
In what was probably Mullaney's greatest recruiting class, Jimmy Walker, Dexter Westbrook, Mike Reardon and company appeared to be the next group to take Providence to the top. The 1964-65 team posted an incredible 25-2 record, and this time went to the NCAA tournament, where they made it to the Elite Eight before hitting a roadblock.
We caught Princeton on a night when Bill Bradley lit up the entire world.
We're kind of thinking ahead a little bit. All we got to do is get by an Ivy League team. Well, we should have got that out of our mind because Bradley was as complete a player as we faced that year.
Princeton won by 40 points. Despite winning 43 games over the next 2 seasons, Mullaney's Friars would never again approach the Final Four. But that did not stop Jimmy Walker from becoming the school's all-time scorer. In his 3 seasons, he averaged 25 points a game, including a 30-plus average as a senior. Included in this was a 50-point jam against Boston College at Madison Square Garden.
In that game, for the first 8 minutes, I didn't score a point because I was trying my best to get my other teammates involved. And then the strategy changed, and that's when I started shooting after the first 8 or 9 minutes. So I think that if there's anything that I remember is the fact of me not scoring a point in a game that I scored 50 points for almost 8 or 9 minutes.
Upon graduating, Walker became the first pick in the NBA draft. The incredible Mullaney era ended in 1969 when he accepted the head coaching job with the Los Angeles Lakers.
We knew Joe was a great coach, and we knew he would do a great job in the professional ranks. We were very fortunate, though, to have a coach like Dave Gavitt then take over the program. And Coach Gavitt was absolutely the best.
I thought Coach Gavitt was a genius in one respect where he not only knew the game and knew how to change defenses and confuse other teams, but he was a people person. He had a way where he could get each individual player in a room, and when he was done with them, make them feel how important they were to the team and his views, and I think that was special. I haven't met many people who had that ability.
After serving under Joe Mullaney as assistant coach in the 60s, it only seemed natural that Dave Gavitt would return to take over the reins at Providence upon Joe's departure. Gavitt did not miss a beat during the 70s. The Friars had 8 more 20-win seasons, and this was accomplished with many players from PC's own backyard. One of the great things to spring out of the success of the Friar teams in the 60s was that now Rhode Island kids were growing up playing basketball. 2 in particular would lead Providence College to even greater success.
Rhode Island, as we know, is a very small state, and here were 2, fabulous players in Ernie D. and Marvin who we were able to keep home. I think their inspiration to play was Providence College related. So while it wasn't a given they were going to come here, it was a dream of theirs, I think, to play at PC.
I remember watching Vinnie Ernst shoot a foul shot in Madison Square Garden when they were shaking the guide wires. I remember watching the Walker years when they had those great games, and it made an unbelievable impact on my desire to be a basketball player.
I was a Jimmy Walker fan. Jim Larranaga, Jimmy Walker, John Thompson, Lenny Wilkins. I mean, it was my dream to go to Providence College.
If there were ever 2 teammates that were meant to play together, it was Ernie DiGregorio and Marvin Barnes. One from North Providence, one from South Providence, one white, one black, one a quick ball-handling guard, and the other a dominating power forward. They would do more than just win basketball games. They would unite a city.
In those days, you had a lot of race problems where a lot of black people didn't like white people, a lot of white people didn't like black people. But Marvin and I never looked at that. We were friends and we were teammates, and that's why we were so successful.
I came out of a ghetto, and I was black prejudiced. All I thought about was black power, black this, black that. Providence College taught me to love people for who people are.
Marvin used to come over my house and eat spaghetti dinners and be with my family, and I used to go over his house with his mother Lula and Alfreda and his family, and they treated me like a son.
I would take Ernie down South Providence because there'd be some black guys down there saying, a little white guy can't play, Italian boy, bring him down here. I'd bring Ernie down there. Ernie bring me to North Federal Hill. We'd go to South Providence, North Providence, East Providence. We go to URI and play guys and pick up games. All over Rhode Island. We went everywhere there was a basketball game. Me and Ernie would go and play pickup games against anybody and everybody.
He always worried that they had so many assistant coaches in South Providence and North Providence that they might be getting more instruction than just from our own staff. But to both their credits, both those guys were just so team-oriented, so unselfish, so popular with their teammates. They were great leaders, both of them.
There would have been a tendency in most situations maybe jealous of the other guy with the reputations coming from the same town, but there was none of that. They just respected each other so much, and once you're 2 stars like that, have that kind of an attitude, it was really tough for anybody else not to toe the line. And it was just the chemistry was right, and personalities, the style of ball they played. It just, again, it was almost too good to be true.
Led by Ernie and Marvin, the Friars went 21-6 in 1972 and were once again the dominant team in the East. For the 1972-73 season, they added sharp-shooting transfer Kevin Stakem and made one more move that would bring the school into the big time.
Providence Civic Center attracted teams in the NCAA tournament, in our own tournament in the regular season, who came to New England for the first time. UCLA, Michigan, North Carolina, you name it. There were very few major big teams in the country that didn't play on this court in one form or another. And it did establish Providence as the basketball capital of the East.
Back then they were playing in Alumni Hall. It sat 3,000 people. It was very difficult to get a ticket. Not that many games were on TV, so it was almost kind of like a secret little society in a lot of ways. But all of a sudden, it's the fall of '72, the Civic Center opens, and now it's 12,000 seats. And you have a great team, you have two great local players, so all the forces kind of met.
Under the guidance of Coach Gavitt, the Friars played a unique brand of fast-break, show-stopping basketball that would lead many to call this Providence team the greatest of them all.
Like, I would get the rebound, pitch it out to the side, and we was off to the races. And we had a great running gun offense. Ernie was one of the best ball handlers, passers that I ever played with in my life.
I had a philosophy that if I played 10 hours and you played 2, I was going to be a better player. So everywhere I went, I took this basketball with me and I always bounced it. So I developed this confidence where I didn't have to look down at the ball so I could see the whole court. The biggest part of my game was an imagination. I used to imagine where people would go and I would throw the ball there and people would go get it. And once that chemistry clicked, you make eye contact, and Dave Gavitt let us open it up. It was a natural for me to run the break.
Ernie would look at me, look at a spot, turn his head, and I'd be at that spot, and the ball would be there. Me, Ernie, and Kevin, we was like Star Trek, Spock and Kirk and Bones, the doctor.
We just developed a nice feel for each other, and it was Gavitt orchestrating it. We just had a lot of fun.
The Friars posted a 27-4 record in 1973, making the NCAA tournament. After wins over St. Joe's and Penn, only highly ranked Maryland stood between PC and the Final Four.
All the experts were picking Maryland. John Lucas, Tom McMillan, Lenny Elmore. They were just too powerful for Providence College. But I had lunch with Ernie D the day before the game, and he said, this one's in the bag. We're going to the Final Four, and we're going to get UCLA in the final.
The key to being a great player in those days was to perform on national television. And that was the scene right there. You had to do it, put up a shut-up, and I was ready to play it.
Ernie took care of business that game, and we worked hard, and we was going to win that NCAA championship that year.
That was, in my life, the most satisfying game ever, because now I know we're going to the Final Four. The whole state is all excited. I remember they had my uniform in the front page of the paper that was being pressed in the cleaners, and that's the stuff they were putting in the paper. It was amazing.
It was the first ever appearance for Providence College in the Final Four. They were pitted against Memphis State in the semifinals.
Running up and down the floor, we're not running any set offense. There's really nothing they can practice to counteract that. And you have Ernie throwing three-quarter balls behind his back. I mean, they were stunned. They didn't know what hit them.
We're blowing Memphis State out. I mean, it's going to be no contest when Barnes gets hurt.
I got hit in the nose. I went down on my knees and held my nose. And then when I stood up, my knee locked. It locked in the kneeling position. So when I stood up, my knee was locked, and I was out.
So you go from this incredible emotion, these unbelievable plays that were just rolling along in that first half, to all of a sudden seeing, the only legitimate big guy you had laying on a table in the locker room and not knowing whether he's going to be able to play again. It was tough.
Believe it or not, I thought we were going to win without him. That's how players feel. You're confident in what you do. I thought I could carry the load myself. But, I missed a lot of shots, and I didn't do it.
And we could have gone to a four corners delay type game, but I kind of knew that Marvin wasn't going to be available for the final either. And given the respect I have for the game and the respect I have for the venue and for the kids who were playing for me, I decided that we weren't going to hold the ball. And that we were going to, try to shorten the game, but do the best we could and not, put on that kind of a stall tactic at that time. And I would do the same thing again if I had the same decision.
What got us to the dance was the fast break, and he was the big reason. He averaged 19 rebounds a game. When you take him out, the other team pounds the offensive boards, they get second and third shots, and we don't get any breaks. So we went from a team that played a certain way all the time to playing nothing like that team, and that's why we got beat. They beat us inside.
The following season, Ernie DiGregorio moved on to the NBA, but Barnes was back. And with some new homegrown freshmen, the Friars attempted to repeat their success.
We went 27-4 with Ernie. The next year we went 28-4, but we didn't go as far in the playoffs. We came across David Thompson and the boys.
They were hosting a regional tournament, North Carolina State, and they were a good team. They eventually won the national title that year. The game was tied with 4 minutes to go, but they fouled Marvin and myself out, but they were a good team.
The miraculous run of the early 70s Friar teams was over. Barnes and Stakem moved on to the pros, and although the subsequent Friar teams could not match their success, Gavitt's team still managed to post winning seasons and pull off some classic wins. One of those was against #1 Michigan in 1976.
In a football analogy, the whole game was 3rd and 1. Just every possession was really tough, and we make a big play at the end where Campbell penetrates into the lane and throws a left-hand hook pass to Misavage, who banks it in off the board with a second to go, and it was great.
We all wanted to take the last shot. We were down by a point, and I had the ball, and I couldn't get the shot off, so I threw it over to Soup Campbell, who he looked to take the shot.
Believe me, I wanted to take the shot. I wanted my hook shot. I wanted to be the man. And when his man sloughed off him, he came towards me, and Bob was open for like a 10-foot jumper. I just threw the pass to him. As soon as I passed to him, I knew he was going to hit it. And he banked it home, and the place went crazy.
We were able to gut it out for 2 overtimes, and the people who saw that game still to this day, who've been to all the PC games, it seems, since that was the best one they've ever been to.
It was the blizzard of '78, and Dean Smith's North Carolina Tar Heels had made it to Providence to take on the Friars.
Our whole state had been in a state of siege for a week, really, and this was the first thing that happened, and it was on national television, and people walked to the game, and it was kind of a message that, we had dug out and we're okay here.
I think it was like 6,500 fans there, and there was the most wildest and loudest crowd I've ever heard, even over the Michigan game. It was absolutely bizarre, and when North Carolina went into their 4 corners, people thought that the game was done. But again, you have the master, Mr. Gavitt, who we worked on that 4 corners for about a week, and trying to press in the right times, in the right situations, and things worked out in our way, and we ended up winning that game also.
Dave Gavitt had done the impossible. He had taken the foundation built by Joe Mullaney and matched his greatness for an entire decade.
That word genius is used a lot in coaching today, but here's a guy that did a tremendous job at Providence, and everybody knew how good a coach he was, but I don't think he got the recognition that he could have gotten as a coach because of what he did with the Big East.
In the fall of 1979, the Big East began its inaugural season. Dave Gavitt, who had stepped down as coach, was the first commissioner of the 7-team league. Unfortunately for Providence College, the team was in a time of transition.
The Big East had formed in the mid-70s. Providence would have been one of the dominant schools, but it formed in 80, and at that time, John Thompson just had it going at Georgetown. There were a lot of other things happening at Syracuse. The Dome was coming online.
When I was at Providence, the Civic Center was brand new. We had the best facility in the East, and when we recruited, Dave recruited back then, he could get who he wanted. I mean, he was actually turning guys away. I think the other team started to catch up, and they started building their own facilities, and they got to play a little bit more in different schools, and I think that's what happened. Other teams caught up to us at that point.
As much of a struggle as it was for Providence, had they been anywhere other than in the Big East, they would have disappeared from the map and might not even be found still today.
Following a legend like Gavitt would not be easy. So when Coach Gary Walters stepped down after only his second season, Joe Mullaney was brought back to the school whose tradition he started. But the college basketball landscape had changed since Mullaney's earlier teams, and his second stint as coach would not be an easy one.
It was very, very good basketball back then. And I mean, you can just go back in history and look at some of the guys on the other teams are great, great players. Many of them played in the pros for a long time, so it was probably an elite league at that time, which it was. So, you know, we played it the hardest that we could, night in and night out, and you know, never ever a feeling that we never belonged. I don't think any of us on the teams during that time ever believed that.
For 5 of the first 6 seasons in the 1980s, the Friars posted losing records. Still, there were some exciting moments, and the team found its best big man since Marvin Barnes in Otis Thorpe. By the mid-80s, the Big East had become the premier conference in the country. But PC was still lagging, and after 4 seasons, Joe Mullaney decided it was time to retire.
There was no big press conference or announcement. He pretty much just told the team in one of our meetings that this is going to be it. And it was near the end of the season, so that was one of the reasons why, when we played that last game at Madison Square Garden, we carried him off the court. We really did appreciate the things that he did for us, and the things that he tried to get us to do, and the things that we learned from him. So he was a very special man.
If you look at PC basketball historically, just when you thought this amazing story was about to end, something would happen. And in '85, you have the Big East. Providence is down when the Big East starts. There's this perception that they're always going to be down, that they can't compete at that level. And I remember going upstairs in the Civic Center. It was a booster club meeting. And Rick Pitino, it was his first time he's going to address this Friar Front Court Club. And he starts this speech. He said, when you go home at night and you fall asleep, I don't want you to think about your bills and your problems and your kids' problems. I want you to dream about cutting down the nets. And I said, this guy's crazy.
In the fall of 1985, Rick Pitino became the 9th head coach in PC history. It did not take long for him to have an impact on his players.
We got a call one day saying that we had a meeting the next afternoon, let's say 2 o'clock, to meet the new coach. One of the players was about a minute late for the meeting, and the next morning he was running suicides in the gym. So that set the precedent as far as Pitino's attitude and what he expected from us.
He was able to improve you as an individual. I mean, leaps and bounds, things that you were able to do that you never thought you could do. Starting from getting in shape and overachieving, and helping you round out your game offensively, teaching you how to play team defense with the press.
And it kind of fit his image coming in here. He was going to shake things up, and he was going to motivate people and get them in shape. And not just the team, almost the whole area. He was going to lift everybody up.
You had a group of young athletes that were not in condition to play fast. Billy Donovan, my star, was something like 31 pounds overweight. He was like the Pillsbury Doughboy.
I knew I was going to have a second chance to really get myself in shape, playing a system and a style that I played in high school, up-tempo, that I thought I'd really fit into. So to me, after my first couple meetings with Coach Pitino, I was certainly very, very excited about him. I don't think he was too excited about coaching me.
In the 1985-86 season, the Friars went 17-14 and returned to the NIT. The following year, Pitino's unique coaching style and a new rule would lead to one of the most magical seasons in college basketball history.
Donovan for 3. Oh!
Because Coach Pitino coached in the NBA, he understood the three-point line better than any coach in the country. And it was the first year it was there, and I don't think there was a coach in the country that took more advantage of it than he did.
Lewis for 3.
Here's Donovan for 3.
Delray Brooks hot in the first half.
Our first 7 Big East games, our opponent didn't make a 3. Not only because we were defending it well, but some of the people like Georgetown and St. John's didn't believe in taking it, still were fighting the rule. We said we embraced it openly, and we wanted to lead the nation, which we did lead.
And this press was really unbelievable, where teams had problems with the press, and he would just get after it 40 minutes and try to wear you down. And he did a great job, Pitino did, with that team, with the personnel that he had to get the most out of those guys. And they were a tough team to play against, and they never quit. And and that was his personality.
To be able to take a team that was not all that talented and by stylistically and taking advantage of that new rule, bring them to the Final Four, which is incredible.
But first, they had to make their presence felt in the Big East. That came in a January game against Georgetown.
For the win, it's Lewis again.
When Pop Lewis hit that shot at the buzzer there, that really said that we were right there with the top 20 teams in the country.
I knew we had something special from the first day. The work ethic that each guy brought to the table. Even when we did our sprints on the track, I saw that everybody was giving 110%. And in order to be successful, you need to bring that to the table each and every day. And I think that's what this team did.
And then we just had a hot run. I mean, Billy Donovan, towards the end of the year, he was just on fire. You know, as they say, he was in the zone. And just, you know, we relied on him so much, and he came through all the time for us.
Donovan. Reverse.
We executed well down the stretch because of Billy Donovan's ability to get the ball to open people, make free throws. The bad part about that, we actually were not playing well at the end of the season, early because of the revenge of the Georgetown game. We played them in the semifinals of the Big East and I think lost by 29, 28 points. And then right before that, we played them at Georgetown where we got killed by 30-some-odd points. So we played Georgetown twice and get killed at the end of the year. But that was okay. We were not going to face Georgetown in the NCAA tournament.
In under 2 years, Rick Pitino had orchestrated an amazing turnaround, but the road to the Final Four would not be an easy one.
It was a tremendous injustice, as well as the Providence College fans, that we would finally get in the NCAA after 7 years, and what happens, we have to play on somebody else's home court, Alabama, Birmingham. So our fans did not go with us. We were big underdogs in the game, and we played very well and took care of Birmingham.
Donovan all the way, nice feed, and Duda lays it in.
The Austin Peay game, with 5 minutes to go, or 4 and change, we were down 10, and came back, made the right plays, got a lot of luck on our side with missed free throws by them, and then we won it.
In the first half, I personally was not playing very well, nor was our team, and I remember Coach Pitino getting into me very, very good at halftime of that basketball game. And then with about 5 minutes to go in the game, we were down by 10. And Coach really got us down as a basketball team to reach down inside to come up with something.
And Billy the Kid did just that, scoring 12 of the team's final 14 points in regulation. After disposing of Alabama in the next round, the Friars' Cinderella ride took them to the Elite Eight. And for the 4th time this season, a date with Georgetown. This time, PC would avenge the 2 previous blowouts. The Providence Friars were once again the pride of Rhode Island.
Even being in Kentucky, I've never seen people going out in pots and pans and banging it on their front steps. And when we came back from that game and arrived at the airport, there were thousands of people. I've never seen such enthusiasm for college basketball.
PC had finally made it back to the Final Four. But in the 80s, you just could not escape Big East rivals. Syracuse was waiting in the wings.
Syracuse was the one team in the conference that dominated us because they had the one player that could check Billy the Kid, and that was Sherm Douglas. Then, on top of it, you take the fact that they had Ronnie Cycli and Derek Coleman and Sherman Douglas, 3 NBA players. We were just overmatched.
Our style of play, you need your shots to go down so you can get into your press. And just that particular day, our shots weren't falling.
And they really, for the most part, controlled the game. That's one of the things I think with a three-point shooting team a little bit, not making excuses to take anything away from Syracuse is, it is a little bit different when you play in a dome for the first time. And certainly our three-point shooting in that game wasn't where it needed to beat Syracuse, and Syracuse did do a great job of taking the three-point line away from us.
It was a good game, but I wish we would have played a little bit better or more to our potential, because that was the only team that, at least in my 4 years, that we didn't beat, was Syracuse.
The Cinderella season was over, but Providence College had once again upheld its long-standing tradition in basketball. Coach Rick Pitino had struck like a bolt of lightning, rejuvenating the program, but just as quickly as he arrived, he soon departed.
I get a call from Coach Pitino that he's, got an offer to coach the New York Knicks, and he was going to take the job. So I had mixed emotions. Part of me wanted him to stay, but also part of me said, if that's one of your dreams and goals, then go for it.
With the success of the 1987 team, PC was able to step up its recruiting efforts. Little-known coach Rick Barnes arrived in 1988 and took the Friars to the NCAA tournament in his first 2 seasons at the helm. Those teams were led by yet another Friar standout, Eric Murdoch, who ended his career at PC as the school's second all-time scorer behind Jimmy Walker. As the 90s began, Barnes brought in more blue-chip recruits, and the outlook for the next decade was promising.
He had coached 1 year as a head coach at George Mason, then his next job was Providence. So he really grew up as a coach in the Big East, going against Jim Boeheim and John Thompson and Jim Calhoun, which is tough. Usually guys come into this league as head coaches with several years' experience. But the thing I'll say about Rick Barnes is he taught Providence College how to win in the Big East.
There's been this perception since the Big East started that Providence was really kind of a second-tier Big East school, that it really couldn't compete year in and year out, and that the Pitino years were kind of a fluke. And along comes Barnes, who showed you that you could recruit here, you could get big-time players here, and you could win. And so to go into New York, which is a very symbolic thing, and to win that tournament, huge for a program like this.
It may not have been an NIT championship or an NCAA Final Four run, but winning the 1994 Big East tournament at Madison Square Garden has to be called one of the greatest achievements in the school's illustrious history. To accomplish it, they would have to go through highly ranked UConn.
Phelps, unconscious.
Rob is from Brooklyn, New York, so he was back in New York, and it was his time. It was his time to rise up to the occasion. He was a senior at the time. He was one of our leaders of the team, and he rised up and took us where we needed to be.
They were, definitely probably the best team in the league that year, and we just, came out and did the things that we did and did it well. We played defense, we rebounded, we played them physical.
Ball game's over. Providence into the final. First time in the school's history.
I believe Connecticut was ranked second at the time, and that was the first top 10 win by Providence in a long time, and really had them excited about winning the Big East tournament for the first time ever.
The win over Georgetown in the finals was not as dramatic, but PC's first Big East title had been a long time coming.
I think about the people that were there, people that had been following Providence for so many years, and knowing that, as Jerry Alamo said one night, the night before we got ready to play, said it's the first time that he'd ever gotten to the last page of the travel itinerary. And looking at him and Eddie Jamil, but just everyone that had been such a big part of it, and the people is what you think about, and seeing how happy they were that we got that done.
That front line was probably the best front line in the history of Providence College basketball. Their starting lineup was Dickie Simpkins at center, Michael Smith at forward, and Eric Williams at the other forward. And unfortunately, they got the 8-9 seed that year in the tournament, had to play Alabama, which had 3 pros on their front line.
The Friars may have lost in the first round of the NCAAs, but in Coach Rick Barnes, the school believed they had someone that could uphold the tradition for years to come. Unfortunately, like Pitino before him, his coaching success at PC would lead to bigger offers.
I was very disappointed because I only had 2 years there, and he recruited me hard, and that was one of the things I wanted him to be there for my remaining 2 years also. And but I understood it from a business side. It's business. Even then it was business.
The reason why I came there was a huge part of it was because of the coach, and he had left, and here I was, 3,000 miles from home, and didn't really know what was going to happen.
But the turmoil of Barnes' departure was soon forgotten when Pete Gillen came in.
He had just a whole bunch of energy. He was always, into encouraging the guys. He never really got on the guys. You know what I mean? Even if he was screaming at you, it was more in a complimentary type of way.
I think Pete Gillen might be the best game coach that Providence has had going back to Dave Gavitt. I don't think we saw the full Rick Pitino here because it was so quick, only 2 years. But Pete Gillen, in a game preparation, standpoint, was outstanding, and I think that really showed in the 1997 NCAA tournament.
What the 1997 Friar team accomplished was just short of remarkable. But compared to great Friar seasons of the past, this ride was not so smooth.
That might have been the most dysfunctional team in Providence history. They had young guys with Shamgod and Jamel Thomas old guys with Austin Crozier, and they never mixed. Even though they were a talented group and went to the Elite Eight, one jump shot short of the Final Four, they didn't like each other. And it was really Coach Gillen who brought them all together.
We had a team that was a little bit rough on the edges. We had a young man from Panama, Ruben Garza, a wonderful guy. But we had a guy from Los Angeles, Austin Crozier, Shamgod from DC, JUCO guys, Derek Brown, guys from Brooklyn, guys from suburbs. So we had a potpourri of different personalities. And when we were focused, we could beat any team in the country.
Great example is Providence wins their first NCAA tournament game against Marquette. Austin Crozier, I think, had 40 points, really a great effort. Their first NCAA tournament win since the '87 Final Four run. And after the game, Garces and Shamgod are fighting because Sham didn't pass the ball to Garces enough.
We had a game in the NCAA tournament. A couple of guys went on strike. They didn't want to play the next game. They were angry. So we had to have a big meeting, and I walked out of the meeting, and 5 minutes later, everybody's hugging each other, and it was like a love fest.
You brought in 6 guys from New York that all knew each other. And then you had 5 guys returning that knew each other. And it was kind of the old coaches guys and the new coaches guys, and there was, not a real good balance there for a while. And, we definitely had the talent where we probably, should have been better than we were all year.
He gets it back.
With the way the season was going, it seemed only fitting that PC would go on one of its classic tourney runs. After a 39-point effort by Austin Crozier took care of Marquette, the Friars ran into perennial power Duke.
Derek Brown was all over the place. He was getting every offensive rebound, every loose ball, finishing every play. Shamgod did an excellent job of just breaking down the defense. That out of all the games was probably the biggest team game that we had all year.
There were a lot of tough kids on that team. They were tougher than Duke. That's why they beat Duke in that second round game in Charlotte, which was really a home game for Duke. One of the best wins in Providence history.
All of a sudden, the Friars of the 90s had joined the teams of the 3 previous decades in the hearts of their loyal fans. They next took care of Tennessee Chattanooga and made it to the Elite Eight.
The Arizona game was definitely a game that we thought that we could win going into it, and played them close. We had some foul problems. Very disappointing for me to watch my last college game from the sideline, but just absolute pride in watching my teammates not give up.
Providence should have beat them. They lost in overtime, but he's coming off the timeout. Lute Olson's yelling at Mike Bibby. And Bibby said to the coach, he says, I can't guard him. He was talking about Sham guys. He said, I can't guard him. I just can't play him. And when you consider that he went number 1 in the draft and Providence was beating them, and Austin Crozier got in foul trouble in that game, sat out for more than half the game. If he had him for the whole game, I think Providence wins that game. And how great would that have been? They end up playing Kentucky in the Final Four, which would have been very interesting to see.
We happened to fly home with the team, and Shamgod is across from me on the aisle. And Sham had one final jump shot in regulation, 15-footer, wide open. If it goes in, Providence goes to the Final Four and might win the national championship because it was a weak Final Four that year. Arizona goes on to win the title, and Sham just kept saying one shot, one jumper, and that's all they were away. One jumper from the Final Four in '97.
Arizona starts the celebration.
And again, it's a reaffirmation that you can do it here. It's not easy. It's never been easy. It's never been a Big East Glamour program. It probably never will be, but it doesn't mean that you can't do it. That we have some special things here, and Providence has some special things that if you work hard and you get a little lucky, that you can beat anybody.
Which brings us to the present day and the outlook for the future.
Well, one of the reasons I came here to Providence College was because of the fact that Joe Mullaney was here for many years, and he was embraced by the school and the community. Dave Gavitt, the same thing. And I look around the Big East, I look at other successful programs, you look at the Connecticut's, the Syracuse's, their coaches have stayed a long time. So I want to be one of those guys. I want to be here for a long, long time and hopefully build the program so we're a winner on a consistent basis.
You look at any successful program in this continuity, and I think he has a long-term commitment to this institution, as do I. And I just want to be able to compete at the highest level in the Big East in basketball and continue the legacy that many of the people that have come before me have established.
It's always about the tradition. And I want our players to understand, you know, what they're doing every day on the court means a lot to the former players, and they have a lot of to uphold as far as tradition and work ethic and being successful not only on the court but off the court as well.
It's amazing that a school that small with about 3,500 students can have the basketball tradition it has, not for a 5 or 10 year period, but really for a long, long time.
It was this almost David and Goliath syndrome, where you felt here we are competing with the biggest schools in the country, and we're just a small little school in Rhode Island.
When I came up here and I seen how close and together everybody was, it made me feel right at home.
You're better off being a big fish in a little pond and make the pond a little bigger.
It just was the mesh that you could tell when you walked in the locker room that this is something here that's going to survive or going to make people sit up and take notice.
I think a real secret of this whole success of Providence College was the atmosphere.
The school has done a good job of hiring coaches that reflect what the school and the community is about.
And the fans, they don't forget. The town, the city really identifies with the school and the team. It's kind of a down-to-earth, blue-collar association.
I almost thought that half of my family was in the stands.
I just think it's one of those niches like Notre Dame football.
I think it was a fluke. I don't think it was ever designed to be a national program.
A lot of it was timing, being in the right place at the right time.
Well, we've always said God is a Dominican, you know, and the success of the Providence basketball program is proof of that.
What Providence College has is its core. It's spirituality, its closeness on campus, the attention you get from the teachers at the school, the family-type atmosphere, that has never changed. Basketball has changed, but the values of Providence College have not.
Providence College taught me a lot about life. I'll be a friar till I die.